so go. He's going to do massive segmentation. And
Absolutely. Instead of segmented pieces, it's one piece of wood. Well, thanks everybody for turning out. I'm Tony Campbell. First demo, so give me a break, but it's great to be here and get a chance to demo for all you guys and ladies.
I suggested it.
Absolutely, so you can blame Hans for this one.
And think about this. He's got a one-way at home, so all his checks and stuff are totally different. So he had to get inserts for everything.
That's true, yeah. My one-way has an M33, so it doesn't match up to it almost will fit on here, but not exactly, so just had to get the inserts for that. Also, the one thing about the one-way is they have an MT3 tailstock. I have no idea why one-way chose to do that, but yeah, could be. They they had the option, so they did. So I want to just go over a few things, give you a 5-minute tour of my shop. I was going to bring pictures, but decided not to. So back in a little bit of my history, back in the 90s, I decided to set up my first shop. Went to Sears. Maybe some of you remember Sears. They used to have a place you could go to and buy tools. So I went into Sears and bought the radio saw, a joiner, and a lathe, a 12-inch lathe with the duplicator. So that was the first lathe that I had back in the 90s. With that lathe, I turned, I think, one chest set, and then that lathe sat over in the corner for about 30 years, covered up, sawdust. It just got used as a table to put all my other junk on. So about 3 years ago, I decided to start turning, so I thought I could bring that lathe back to life and use it. Well, after a few times of trying to use that old Craftsman and breaking the tool rest on it with a bad catch, and watching a bunch of YouTube, I decided I need to upgrade a little bit, so that's where I got into my one-way lathe, went out there and bought it used. So a hell of a difference between the Craftsman 12-inch and the one-way. But my current shop now is about a 13 by 30 shop. I have 3 lathes in it. 2 of them are the Craftsman, old Craftsman, that are more going to be a buffing station. And then my one-way is the main one. And then everything I've purchased over the last 35 years, bandsaw, all of the stuff for flat work. I do like doing flat work as well. That's what I did for years, more hobby stuff and whatnot. My father was a carpenter, so I've been around tools my entire life and just love working, woodworking. Something else I wanted to talk about was YouTubes and demos. This is, and everything I say today is in my opinion. None of this is factual, well, it could be factual, but it's in my opinion. Or also ITO is in Tony's opinion. But I watch YouTube and you see a lot of stuff, and I realize, you watch YouTube, I see a bunch of stuff turn, thousands and thousands of things, and I'll sit there and watch it, and I think I can do it. And which is a good thing. To watch YouTube and you think you can do something is great. But what it comes down to finally is I realized after watching a bunch of YouTube, you walk up to the lathe for the first time and it's like, well, how do you actually do it? Because you've got all this memory that you've put in there from watching it, but when you stand up to the lathe, you realize, how did they put the banjo? How did they put the rest? How did they stand? So that stuff you can only learn by actually doing it. So get in front of the lathe as much as you possibly can, and that's what I'm trying to do over the last 3 years is get in front of the lathe, do as much turning as I can, take as many of the hot classes as I can, because you pick up something from each of them. And I've learned a lot from many of you guys in here already. I've learned a lot from you over the last 3 years. So. And I got my cheat sheets to kind of keep me on track here. Safety, I think we always want to talk about safety. So I kind of came up with something. When's the best time to think about safety? Do you want to be thinking about it while you're in your shop, while you're doing your project, or do you want to think about it while you're sitting in the emergency room? So I would suggest you think about it, all the way through doing your project in your shop, before you start the project, as you're doing the project, stay focused on safety. Next thing was some chucks. I wanted to talk about chucks briefly. And I don't know if you guys have seen the newest thing to come out. I think this may really take off for the market. You know, it's a chuck, and you can individually adjust each one of these if you want to pass that around. Hottest thing out there.
Yeah.
I bought that back in the 90s. That's what I got with my Craftsman lathe at the time. So
Take off on the old
You're gonna have to get a few inserts for this.
yeah, it still fits the Craftsman, but you know, it has a key. And you sit there and you adjust each one independently. And the first time I tried to use that, it's like, well, how do you get something really centered? And you were measuring, trying to get that thing centered. So now I'm thinking maybe for off-turn center, something, it may actually work for that. You could move that piece if you wanted to, but yeah, that's kind of a relic. So of course we've moved on to better chucks now. When I got my one-way, it came with the Stronghold. And I really like these, of course. So one came with it, and like most of us, I don't like actually changing the jaws. So you go out there and buy a couple more. So you have 2 or 3 or 4 chucks, or I think Rob has 37, maybe he told me.
That's on the first shelf.
On the first shelf is 37, all right. So I like the one-way. I ended up with 3 of them and a lot of things, but recently, one of the club members was selling his shop, and he had Vic marks. So I went over there and actually bought 3 Vic marks from him, and these things are just massive compared to the one-way. So I do like the Vic marks. These were 10 or 15 years old, but I was able on YouTube, somebody showed how to take them completely apart. You soak them in carb cleaner, and then you can put it all back together. So these are like brand new, and I'll get another, hopefully 30 years out of them maybe. So I like the Vic marks as well. All right, so now let's get into the design, and we'll go ahead and pass around a few of these. This is what I've been working on, starting with a 2x4. So I think all of you have seen this stuff in the back of Rob's truck. It came from Todd. This is what he had in storage. So you'd probably think, well, you throw this away. Some of you have probably thrown this type of stuff away before. You see it on the side of the road. But you could take a 2x4 like this and actually, turn it into something. So first thing I do, of course, is cut that down into the 3.5-inch blocks. And then once you have the 3.5-inch blocks, then you can begin to make things out of it. So if you guys want to pass a few of these around, just get a chance to see them. And it's just a lot of variety of different things. But that's what you're here to see, is the process. And I've only been doing this now for about a month.
If you drop on the floor, they bounce.
Yeah, they're pretty hardy.
Hard.
It's a pretty solid wood. You can really tell. So I started, let's bring a few of these over to the camera. I suppose that'd be better. Get back over here. So of course, when you start this, I was turning everything kind of round and making a variety of things. You've got 1.5 inches to work with by 3.5 square. So I usually get on there and turn it round. You can start with a recess or a tenon. Some of these are recesses. I'll show both today, hopefully. Other ones have a tenon on the bottom of them. And then also, once I did this for a while, I've realized, well, wait a minute, let me see if I can just start leaving some of it square. So you'll see a variety of the ones that I've left them square, and then they'll either have a tenon or a recess on them. So this wood is really hard wood. There appear to be 2 different types. One of them was more of a red color, and the other was more brownish. This one, you just can't keep your tool sharp. This stuff just eats up the edge. I was going to bring the sharpener today, but instead I tried to bring just a few extra tools in case I lose the edge on them. So turned those, got about 15 here today to show. The wife kept 5. She wouldn't let those out of the house. It is the first thing that I've turned that when I take it upstairs, she actually liked it. Other stuff, it's like, yeah, whatever. But this, she started liking these. And so she started a collection. It started with 1. I'd bring the next one up. She's like, okay, well, I'll take that one instead. Well, now her collection has 5 in it. With turning this, of course, they don't all come out perfect. So I've got some examples here of things that do happen. This one here, it started this one. This one is with a tenon. But I got a little creative with a tenon, and I took out too much of the backing support for the tenon in my design of embellishing the bottom. So this one here, you can see the evidence of what happened when you tighten up the chuck a little too tight.
Collapsed.
Yep, I lost that one. This other one here, I turned this as a recess. So I went ahead and turned the recess, get it all set up, do the profile on the side, and I thought this one was pretty good. But this one's another oops is, well, you better make sure you make your recess big enough because you can't get it on the chuck if the recess is too small. Another example here.
Right into the chuck?
Yeah, it could. Another example here is a recess. I made this one and thought this was fine until I went to mount this one up. And in this particular case, I think the recess itself is good, but the surface here, I left it a little bit domed, so you couldn't get the chuck in this one. So another example of one, if you're knocking these things out, if you were to do, a half a dozen of these at one time, and then you go on to the next stage to put them in the recess and realize you've messed up all 6 of them, you've got to turn around and go back. 2 more here. This was also, this was on a recess. Maybe this one broke off because it was getting kind of ugly. I didn't really like this design after I had did it. But this one I blew off the chuck yesterday. I was going to make one last cut or one last scrape on the inside. I got a catch, and when you get a catch on that, it knocks that one off the lathe.
How are you holding these in the headstock?
I'll go over that. Yeah, I've got 4 different, yeah.
There's nothing.
Yeah. And then this one yesterday too was another bad catch. This wood is really hard, but this one had a catch, and the evidence of the catch is there, and that one was knocked off the lathe as well. So you will have, if you choose to make these, you will have some issues with it. So some of those, would just be go back and go ahead and fix them. But other ones you may not fix. So any questions? And stop me at any time if you do have questions. All right, so.
I do have a question. Were you wearing a face mask when they came?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. They fly off pretty quick, yes.
When you got the raw wood, how did you clean it up? Did you run it through a planer? Did you?
No, I just face it off. No, I cut them into square, and then I just face it off. So once I get it mounted up, whichever method I choose, once you have it in the lathe, you just face it off at that point. And then if I'm doing the square and I leave the 4 sides, then I just go back and sand whatever's left on the square. I then sand that. So let's say something like this one here, where there's a lot of square surface. I save that, and whatever I didn't turn away, I'd then go back and power sand those edges. Any other questions? All right, so some of the things with this, of course, you do have to source the wood, cut the blanks. For this particular project, just cut them square. If you're turning something and you want to have the perfect match on every side and leaving it square, then be sure to check the size of that 2x4. It's 3.5 or it's 3 7/16 or just depends. So you may want to match it exactly if you're trying to get the exact pattern on the outside square. If you want something that's not exact, I think I'm passing around some that you've got the pattern on the outside. It doesn't. 2 sides match, of course, and the other 2 sides match. But that's just, it depends how much, you want to take care of that, or have Dan over, and Dan will make sure you get that square right.
Ken Vicker wouldn't stand for that.
And talking about marking the center on these, depending on which method you use, I'm going to, possibly show 3 different methods. For one method, if you were mounting between centers, you'll sit here and you'll need to mark the centers. If you're using a worm screw, you just simply mark one side. If you're just mounting directly in the chuck, then you don't have to mark any centers. You want to embellish the bottom. When I talk about the other ones embellishing the bottom, if you turn all of those over, people really don't like, for some reason, I think the first thing they do is pick up a bowl and they look at the bottom of it for some reason. So you want to have something on the bottom of interest. The few rings, I think somebody said, maybe it was Glenn, you put 3 rings in there, you make an extra $5 on it. So, and I'll show a way too on actually how I, instead of measuring, of course, once you've got your chuck, you know what size recess or tenon you need, then you need an easy way to mark it every time so you're not constantly having to mark each piece individually. So I'll show you a way that I do that. Sanding, we're not going to do any sanding today. We'll do my final cuts. My cuts are not March lace type cuts, but we'll just cut. We'll pretend like it's sanded and then we'll move on and maybe do a finish or two. And then buffing, I did bring the buffing stuff in case we want to buff, but everybody's probably seen enough buffing. You go through the 3 different phases to buff it. So, all right, so we get into the 4 methods to talk about. And one of them, I just kind of did a little mental thing of how you would do this if for some reason you didn't have a chuck, which is kind of hard to think of people turning nowadays without a chuck. But if you didn't have a chuck, of course you could mount this up, something like this here. I didn't even consider a faceplate, yeah. So you'd mount this up something like this, and of course if you have this mounted, you could come in here and I shaped the back side of this, shaped the side of it, and then I started, hollowing out the inside, but you get to a point that you can't get all the way in there. So it's kind of like, well, if you don't have some way of mounting this other than this, that's going to be kind of painful. So then, once you take this off, you're going to have to deal with that inside. And that just doesn't seem sensible to have to do that much work for one of these little bowls. But that's the limitations if you were stuck and only had to do it between centers, or somebody had a challenge and said, hey, do it between centers only. That could be a little bit of a challenge. So I really wouldn't recommend that way. Method number 2 to talk about is actually doing this between centers. You can actually start between centers. So let's go ahead and let's do that. So for this first one here, so of course the easiest way to mark centers, everybody knows this. We're just going to go from corner to corner, and we'll get the center marked. I'll go ahead and do both sides. I don't have a tip in this tailstock side, and the reason I don't have a tip in it is that little dimple that it makes. I don't want to deal with that later. I don't want to have to clean that up, so I took the tip out of here. But let's go ahead and mark the centers. Once I have that done, then of course we'll start here between centers. It's good to have a little bit of light on the subject. Bring this up, and to kind of get this, I'm just going to line it up, make sure it looks somewhat straight in there. Lock that down. And everybody in the first row ready to catch this? For this first one, I need to go ahead and mark where I'm going to do my tenon. And of course, to decide, where you're going to do your tenon. On this one, I'm going to do a tenon because it's going to be easier to make the tenon than a recess since I have the live center here. So for this one, I'm going to come over here to the chuck. Now, if you know this, I've learned this in all the classes with everybody here, is for these particular chucks, when they manufacture these, they make the entire jaw and then they go back and cut it. So the perfect circle is not completely closed. The perfect circle is open just a little bit to where they made the cut. And I don't know how large that cut actually is. I'm assuming it's about that. So
Put it on the end of the lathe so he can get it.
just kind of assuming it's about that. So then, of course, this is where you come in and you decide that this is going to be, you know, the size that you need your tenon. And then you come over here, and of course you get this thing spinning, and you can hold one side, don't touch the second side. You don't want this thing to flip around on you, and you would mark that tenon. I find it easier, just by the time I do that, I realized in my shop or somebody else, I saw them, you know, use the pencil method of I have this live center here, and this thing is pretty close. So what I like to do is just have a pencil nearby, a flat carpenter's pencil. And lay this right there on top, and you can make your mark, and that's how I know where to go ahead and cut my tenon. The pencils also, if I have another one, another chuck, maybe I stand the pencil up on side, and I'm gonna get a little bit higher mark. Or if I'm doing something else, sometimes I'll even double stack a pencil to get a mark even further out, just depending on what I need. And of course, if you're turning 6 or a dozen of these, once you've figured out what you need, then this is a quick and easy way to get it every time and not constantly be measuring it. And safety, of course, is good. A little short story about these glasses. Safety, I was wearing these. Luckily, I was on the table saw a few months ago, cleaning up a piece of a plywood for a drawer, and there was this little shiver of bouncing on the side. I was just cleaning up that edge, and I'm sitting there and kind of watching it. Well, I had these glasses on. I didn't have a face shield on at the table saw, but I had these glasses on, and when that piece came off the edge, it kind of lodged right here. So there's a chance that if I hadn't had these glasses on that day, I may be one-eyed Tony today. So be safe.
Take your chuck off the thing so it doesn't.
Thank you, sir. Yep. Now the good safety is, like Hans just said, don't stack all your stuff on this. It's also bad to stack your tools there unless you have a special tool rest. So now, my favorite tool for doing this now is the bidan. So I'll come over here, and let me get my additional face shield on. And these are prescription glasses. They're rather cheap at zennyoptical.com. You can get prescription ones.
Are they polycarbonate or something like that?
I believe so, yep.
We want to make sure they're impact resistant.
All right, so come in here. You want to cut at center with this. So just kind of judge where center is. That looks a little bit low. This is also why I use, for this one I'm going to do a tenon, because you can see it's a little difficult to get past all of the tailstock and everything. But I can come in there and do the tenon. Make sure you're nice and tight on everything. Just turn this back on. Oh, it's nice to have a speed on this. The one way, no speed gauge. You just have to look at the manual gauge and kind of just turn it. So I usually just go by sound. Or so I'm going to come in here. Make sure you have some light. And go ahead and make my recess. And one thing to do about the recess is, at this time I'm also going to still do some sanding. So make sure you leave a little bit of extra so that you can sand it off. And if you're doing a demo, leave even more because you don't want this thing coming off the chuck. So we'll go ahead and do that. And actually, let's take out just a little bit more there while we have the opportunity. Just to make sure the jaws can get in there on the tenon. And then now it's time to go ahead and we can do some profiling for the outside of this. So at this point, I'll just come over here. I don't even have a design in mind just yet. I'm going to get down to where I'm turning, right about center. Make sure you're clear. And then I just start, at this point I kind of wing it to decide what I'm going to make. So I'll start just making some cuts. And you're also turning air here a little bit, interrupted cut. So you just nice and easy. And it's about this time, at some point here, you do have to decide what you're going to turn. So for this one, I think I'm going to go ahead and go round on this one. Since I'm going to decide to go round, I can be a little more, deliberate about going in and taking these cuts. You can also see the shadow line as far as, the wood that you're turning in air, you can see it there. So I'm going to decide just to go ahead and see if we're not getting close to brown with that. We're almost there. I didn't quite have this thing completely squared, and you can see that. So I need a little bit more to get that round. Little design there, feature. All right, so now that's round. This is with a tenon. Hope I left that tenon big enough. It's looking a little small there for some reason. But let's go ahead, and now we need to profile this a little bit. So go ahead, I'll take the curve, or you can decide, do you want to take this curve? Do you want to make it a curve? Do you want to leave this as a foot? These are all decisions that you get to make as you're turning. Take a little bit there, come back. And just come up with something that you like for that particular turning. So that's pretty good. I'd possibly come back with a scraper, clean it up a little bit if I needed to or wanted to. And then about this time, I'd go to the sandpaper. And like I said, we're not going to do any sanding today. But what I recommend is something like this right-angled sander. This works really well. And then I have all the different grits. So I have the 80 grit, the 120, and I just simply, set those up. I'll have them all sitting there, and then I just simply go through the grits, one at a time. My recommendation is, as you get started, if you start with the 80 or something, check and see if it actually did its job. If you've missed something there when you did 80 grit or 120 grit or whatever, if you're still seeing that particular grit didn't get everything you expected, stop and make a decision. Do you need to go to a lower grit? Do you continue with that grit? Do you go back to the tool possibly? But just don't keep moving. Don't go from the 80 to the 600, and when you get to 600, you're like, oh man, I've really messed something there up. So then you got to go back and start over. So I just recommend that you take the time, stop in between each grit. Then once you know that you're getting a good sand for that particular thing, then you can continue. But the right-handed angle drill here works really well. And the quick change, Woodworking Wonders is where I got these. These are a nice quick change. So you can quickly go from one grit to the next. I've got them labeled, so it's easy enough just to switch and get done with sanding. Nobody wants to spend time on sanding. But we're going to save you from the sanding today. There's no need to see that. I think maybe you guys don't use sandpaper? So, all right, so at this point, I'm not going to spend a lot of time making this one look really pretty for today. We've got the tenon. I'm really considering or thinking, did I make that the right size? We'll find out.
Long pencil.
So at this point, we're going to take this off. We're going to decide if I, for some reason, wasn't paying attention, which happens. And I think I really, yeah. Somebody wasn't watching what pencil line I was using. But for that case there, I'm not going to mount this one up. Not sure what happened, but I think you get the case there. Then I would turn around and I would mount this one in the lathe, and then I could turn the other side of this one. So we'll save that one. So this is starting, and this whole thing is you start here between centers. As you saw, I turn this side. This allows you then to take this and mount it in the chuck. So the next thing you would end up with is you'll end up here in the chuck. Then you have this, you have that in the chuck, you mount this, and then you can work on this side. You can finish the profile on here. You can hollow out the inside of this, and then you have your little dish. So that's the center. But then the one thing that you have to do at that point is you have to come back and deal with this side. So then you have to decide, okay, now I'm going to have to turn this thing back around and mount it for the third time. To mount it for the third time, you can open up your chuck. And this is a little bit of a, I wanted to show this as you can do it. I would proceed with caution. Let's go ahead and put this on here.
Tommy, one tip is I usually start a little large on my tenon, and I use the calipers to sneak up on.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's,
I check up frequently and make sure I was right on the tenon.
yeah, valid point. Yeah, very valid. And yeah, and the closer you get that tenon to, the better hold you get. The closer to the true circle, you're going to get your best hold. You know, if you leave it a quarter inch, half inch larger, then you're not going to get the same hold you would if you do get the perfect tenon. So it does make sense to go for that perfect tenon. All right, so let's go ahead and mount this one in here. So this would have been mounted up then. Well, let's just see if we, let's take this one that I've already turned and let's just remount it for a second. And that's the one advantage of having this, that you can go back and mount these again by leaving the tenon, leaving the recess on there. I can remount this. And yesterday I noticed a couple of those I wasn't happy with the finish. So I was able to just go back, remount them, sand them a little bit more, and put a better finish on them. But now this would be the second stage here. Since I messed this one up, you know, you'd be mounted here and you go ahead and do all of your profiling on the outside. You take out the inside, and then you have this, but then you've still got to come back and deal with this original center that was over here. You've got to come back and deal with that bottom. So that's where you, of course, would take it off the chuck, and then you're going to flip it back around, and then you're going to have to mount that somehow. And if you only have, you know, if you're using the one jaw or the one chuck and you have one set of jaws, this is dangerous. I'll show the danger here. You open this thing up wide enough. I don't recommend this, but each of you does what you like in your shop. You come back and this particular one won't mount like that, but another round one, if you had to, you would expand it out far enough and do this. Why is this dangerous? That's because you've got these jaws extended well beyond the body. So this is not recommended, but if you're one jaw, you may have to do this, but that's, you know, proceed at your own peril. Be careful of this, stay away from it. There's other things that as woodworkers we work on that are danger, but this one is definitely, you wouldn't want to get your knuckles caught by any of this coming around. So that's how you would take care of it. So you could see that that was 3 mounts. Mounted the first time, mounted the second time, mount it the third time of some way to go back and clean up that bottom. But you ask, is there a better way?